Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Chief Architect Forum News. My name is Kevin Donovan, and with me, as usual, Brice. Brice, how you doing?
Been really great, Kevin. Wow, some really good discussion before we got into this today. So we're focusing, I think, on three topics today. Sniffing with robots. Um, I don't know what that means. We'll get into that. I hope it's not like with dogs, but we'll see. And number two is Grok versus ChatGPT and woke versus non-woke AI models. And then that I think if we're going to talk about that, we may as well talk about open and closed source deployments. So let's start off with robot sniffing. So what's happening here? Like when I hear sniffing, the last time I got it, into this stuff. I was at a theater with Scratch and Sniff, and I'm assuming
LLaMA.
smell around it. But these robots are actually being what's happening with these robots, Kevin?
Robots that smell with AI. It's a joint collab with Cornell and Intel. And yeah, they have like chemical sensor arrays that can detect, what you would call like olfaction or something. Like they can detect the presence of chemicals that generate smell for humans, and so it enables robots or sensors to detect smells. Can be very practical. Sounds goofy, but like gas leaks,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
disease biomarkers. Some of them apparently have some smell to them. I mean, bad food in your fridge. Your fridge could tell you that, the milk has been left out too long when you put it in last time. I don't know.
Oh, that's all I need is my fridge nagging me, Kevin. So this is really interesting. So, I'm just going to, take on this is that there's a sense when you talk about things like smell and taste, even that we'll probably move into, which I would see as a next step for this. There's a sense that we have of cognition with these things, right? And the real question then is, we're going to be enabling multimodal inputs to our things like our large language models to inference on that. And ultimately, we're moving in this direction where we're kind of simulating human cognition and moving to this idea of neuromorphic understanding, right? Where we map out what we're doing against the brain's modalities, I think, at the ultimate. And we're probably still a long way away, but what we're seeing right now, which actually fits nicely into this, I think, I don't know what you've experienced here, but this idea of multimodal input to large language models, I think, has already started with this idea that you have text generation, you have, video generation, you can understand the different modalities, and now we have smell and we can start to put them together. What do you think about this idea that now we might have multimodal input, vision with smell, and that really does open up a whole another level of reasoning in a way.
Yeah, super interesting. That reminded me of an episode of 60 Minutes that if people haven't seen, they should. Have you seen the DeepMind episode?
No,
60 Minutes with Demis Hassabis?
no, I haven't seen it. What?
Interesting. Well, obviously he's intelligent. He was like a chess, master at age 12. He last year won a Nobel Prize for protein folding. It used to
Okay.
take about a year to figure out one. He got DeepMind trained and programmed and mapped out about 200 million in a year. Yeah, million.
From what I understand, that actually changed the whole nature of protein folding algorithms, right? Like at one point that was a big deal. Like you cut 20 seconds off protein folding, you get up there, you're now it's like apparently it's a matter of like not a big deal anymore. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
because of his breakthroughs, right?
Yeah, not really. And what it reminded me of was on that episode, they showed a prototype, something they were calling ASTA, I believe, or ASTRA, star. Um, and it was just on a device. And they had the guy from 60 Minutes walking around a little art exhibit that they had set up, and it was instantaneously identifying the works. It would tell you about them. It would make a story about them. It would animate the picture and you could move around in it. And yeah, he started talking about this could be used everywhere. They had him with the glasses, walking around like, what's that building? What's it? So it's, you're constantly present, AI buddy that's telling you about everything. But then, yeah, multimodal. Of course, it has full bandwidth real-time vision that it's, computing and inferencing. But to add smell, like you could go to a wine tasting.
A wine tasting, or you could go to even something like the, like a major, battle in history, and you would literally smell the sulfur from the gunpowder and stuff. That would add a whole other dimension to the experience, I think.
To create, yeah. Well, of course, then they'd have to be like signaling electrodes in your brain or something, I guess.
But we're getting there. There's the neuromorph. Musk is coming. This should be a future discussion. Is the whole neuromorphic computing, like the implants and stuff, right? Enable that. But I guess for now, you're right. We're not at the point where we can actually enable the smells, but we can sense them. So
yeah.
It's like I could be driving in my car and it could be like, okay, there's carbon monoxide here, and I hear a sound, and maybe you got a muffler leak. Let's deal with it. If you still have a gas, not a hydrogen-powered car in the near future or something.
Yeah, it certainly kind of opens your mind to different possibilities. I thought multimodal, when I ran into that word first, it meant not just text. So it was like text and speech, maybe.
Yes.
And then video, pictures, images, and then, multiple images being video. Now, yeah, smell. What next? Pretty interesting.
Very interesting. And so the other thing, so moving on to our topics, Grok versus ChatGPT. So Mr. Musk has a new take on this whole thing. Why would I use Grok, Kevin, or ChatGPT? What's the stance of you? Are they becoming political now, these LLMs? Like, are they like Democrat, Republican kind of, or what's happening?
Well, apparently, Elon is so enthused by his work with the current president that he's adopting some of his techniques, of course, even in product development and pitching. So he was apparently pitching Grok as a truth-seeking, free speech alternative to, we don't like mainstream media. We certainly don't like mainstream AIs either. ChatGPT apparently is woke, whereas Grok is truth-seeking. So do with that what you will.
Well, that's interesting. Does this mean now that, what do we do with this bias? Do we need to? This is a whole ethical question, Kevin. Do you need to label up front like what do you call those? A warning to viewers that a trigger alert. This might trigger you if you're not, like, if you go to ChatGPT, if you're right wing, this is going to trigger you, and then have the left wing one. Oh wait, Grok, we're not woke. This may trigger you. Do we do that, or do we need to do something a little bit more like open annotations, where we start to say here's an inference. And here's the bias. I know there's, we were just talking before in our meeting, there's an amazing, website called I think it's called Ground News or Blind Spot. And it's this idea that if you get a story, they present 20 shades of it from the right to the left. So you get that idea of the story from all these perspectives.
Nice.
And that raises the other question. Can you really tell a story without a perspective? Is that even possible nowadays?
No. Yeah, right. No, of course not. Yeah. That's interesting. It's like asking the fish how the water is. I remember the first time I was outside of the U.S. and read other newspapers and compared, like, the story in my, the Chicago Tribune as opposed to the story in the International Herald Tribune. There were different slants on the reporting. It wasn't context free. And sure, every model has bias. A lot of people think you should try and remove it. Maybe Elon doesn't think you should remove it. Maybe he thinks it should be mixed in. And then, yeah, when you have more and more applications that are fronts that are calling a
Yep.
backend LLM, do we need something on the label saying what's inside?
Well,
Caution.
and that's interesting. So, because Elon sort of took that, from what I understand, I'm not actually on the platform, but with his, I think, X platform, I
Sure.
don't know if they've introduced it yet, or they were talking about introducing the idea of community standards, and rather than censor items, put the debate around them, right? So that
Oh, yeah, that has happened. Right.
it has happened. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's to me, it's a similar thing here is when you come up with a decision, and we've actually seen this somewhat with ChatGPT with its research capability, where you can ask it with the ChatGPT research version, okay, where are you getting this stuff from? And it can actually give you sources, and you can actually double check them, right? I think that would go a long way to maybe not eliminating the bias, but exposing it so that you can think around it.
It might, annotations and sourcing might expose the bias to people who are biased to click. But you are going to have a lot of people who, go to some website and are looking for something, and maybe that service on that website uses a backend LLM. The bias built into the LLM is going to affect its output, and they will take that as gospel. And it could easily be
Yes.
biased and maybe heavily biased. That might be what Grok becomes, the truth social of LLMs.
Well, and you bring a great point there too. There's also like bias inherent in the way we word our prompts, and people can put things in like, give me an explanation that shows the Earth is flat, and there it goes. The Chat GPT will probably provide some of these explanations. It will go, of course. Maybe not this example, but in some other cases, it will go, of course.
Yeah.
Here it goes. Here's your proof, and it's just hallucinated because you've just asked it in your prompt to hallucinate,
Sure.
and you're getting what you asked for. But yeah, we got to pull that out. And a great example. And this is our third thing to move into. I think where you get a lot of these things where they're hard to untangle was the whole story with I think it was DeepSeek when it came, like, what was the whole thing there, right? There was so many versions of the truth when it came out. Probably some of them were by the CCP, Ministry of Propaganda, I'm sure. Maybe not. And others were like totally anti this, right? Trying to put it down. And so now, which is the right version? What's actually happening here, right? And then as we went along, we started to see some stuff, but we could still take that apart. For instance, we were talking a bit earlier, and did DeepSeek contribute anything? Well, probably not in the training like we thought. But they did have an open source approach to things, right? Like they were open with it. I think there's a benefit to that. What are your thoughts around that, Kevin?
Well, if I could just backpedal for a
Yeah.
minute, the DeepSeek thing reminds me that didn't it give like funnily vague answers around Tiananmen Square because
Yes.
it was not given that training data or given adjusted training data?
Its answers were consistent with those that the CCP might give,
There you have
right?
it.
It was a
Yeah.
good citizen.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, you could certainly, it's all in the training data. So, if not now, in the future, which I guess only means 3 or 6 months from now, what happens if you type in, give me the pros and cons on critical race theory to
Yep.
ChatGPT and to Grok? You might get some very different pros and very different cons out of those two. So that was just one thought about the training and trying to actually not erase but build in bias. That might be a thing.
Well, and to that point, Kevin, there were people that tested the two of them back to back, right? Like those sorts of experiments.
Yeah.
And they were, ChatGPT versus DeepSeek, very different answers.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
go on. Yeah.
Yeah. And then around the other point about open source, and that I felt was one of the bigger and maybe slightly overlooked pieces of news around DeepSeek, that this is an open source model. And yeah, I mean, maybe they sort of cheated. Oh, we had some GPUs. They weren't the big ones, but okay. and we kind of cheated here or there and did it faster and this sort of thing. You know,
Yeah.
maybe you can learn some tips, but that it was open source, I think, is part of, you know, the reason for its success. And it was interesting to see the giant kind of stumble for a moment. Sam Altman openly speculated, I wonder if that's maybe something we should look into. Did we make a mistake here, closed sourcing everything? Now in my LinkedIn feed,
Yep.
Peter Kostev, great guy to follow. He posted a shot of Sam Altman and himself on a Zoom call. Now he said, okay, this is a little bit fake. There are 20 other people, but that level, small groups, OpenAI is having chats with end users and developers about exploring just the ideas around what would an open source model look like? What should we be thinking about? What should we be doing? Will they close everything down and go fully open source? Probably not, but will there maybe be another model or a line from OpenAI that's open sourced at some point? I would bet on it, actually, at this point.
And wow, that's really interesting. So, you know, one thought around that is, as you go open source, say with DeepSeek, the flip side to that is, I think a lot of people, or there was warnings that DeepSeek may be security compromised. That if you're going to put it in, be careful about putting it into an enterprise. We don't know what the security ramifications are. I think was part of that discussion. Does open source do anything to mitigate that, do you think, that people can look at it now and see what's actually being done? And how much does the fact that it's open source really change how it's been trained? Can you really open source a large language model?
Well, yeah, at this point, of course. I mean, they would bootstrap it with the models they have that have all the training data that they have. I don't know, but you know, I mean, more eyes, better. I mean, that's, you know, it's the gold
Yep.
standard in cybersecurity, of course. It has been in cryptography forever, or well, RSA wasn't open, I guess, but it has been for a long time. So yeah, I gotta think that it's a net positive for the space. Will it produce better models faster? Will it be able to, yeah, be more transparent and people be able to trust them better, you would think? Yeah, the training is a question, but yeah, I would think that it makes it, you know, more attractive and probably gets more use, simply, you know, just gets picked up more. I mean, I don't think anybody would be using LLaMA if it wasn't open sourced, you know, from Meta. So yeah, I
Yep.
gotta think that I, I can't see them not doing it at this point. I think they're gonna put it in the product mix in some way.
That makes sense. Great. Well, great discussion. Covered a lot of ground, a lot of questions today, but I think more than answers. Um, so we'd love like the video if you do like it, and comments below. Thank you everyone for joining us. Really great discussion today. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Brice. Thanks, everybody.